Hello, everybody. This is Charmaine Niles, and I'm the current board president for Clayton State University Student SHRM chapter. And welcome to our very first HR podcast series. If you work in human resources, you've already heard the chatter about whether our values justifies our existence. There are many that believe HR should be replaced or consumed by other business function. I, for one, disagree. Therefore, this will be the basis of our discussion today with the dynamic executive coach and leader, Mrs. Karen Hilton. For students that are transitioning from college life to the workplace, Karen will guide us to what tools are effective in helping us to disrupt HR and reposition its focus as being an effective asset in any organization. Good morning, Karen. Welcome.
Good morning, Charmaine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time out and sharing with us your wisdom and your knowledge and experience. We definitely need that now that we're going out into the working world.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to start out by just give us a little bit about your HR background and your current role as president and executive coach with TAP Coaching.
Absolutely. So right now I serve as founder and principal at TAP Executive Coaching and HR consulting. And in that role, the title kind of belies itself as I'm an executive coach and HR consultant. But prior to this role, I was an HR practitioner and have more than 20 years of experience in various types of HR roles. And I really came to HR quite by accident. I wasn't intending to go into HR, and I certainly wasn't intending to go into leadership, but HR kind of found me. But I started in HR doing kind of benefits administration and reception and onboarding people. And I just found such great joy in that. The truth be told, I'm really more of an operations girl. So I like to see how things function. I like to understand kind of the roots of the business. I like to understand the business in general in terms of our products and services and value proposition to the market. But I also found that I loved the connection between what the business was trying to achieve and leveraging people to achieve those business results. And so that's really how I got to human resources. So I feel like I grew up in HR, so to speak, over my career, and then just went into roles of varying levels and types with different types of areas of focus. And eventually I ended up in my last corporate role before I went into private practice as VP of HR for a global technology company based here in Atlanta. And I had responsibility for HR in 4 countries. And that was exciting and fun and absolutely fast paced. But then in 2013, my mother, who was my best friend in the world, became catastrophically ill. And I had to make some choices about how I was spending my time. And so I resigned from that position and became her full-time caregiver. And for the next 7.5 months, she became ill in January of 2013, and by April, we were really at a crossroads. And so I left that role, and for the next several months was her full-time caregiver. She left this earth in September of 2013. I took a few months off to kind of reimagine what my life would look like, and in January of 2014, I officially opened my executive coaching practice and HR consulting practice. So that's a little bit about my background.
That's a lot. I appreciate it. And I have 2 follow-up questions from what you just described or explained. Sure. There are many facets of HR. You mentioned doing various roles. Do you think it's important for students to, if they're re-entering or getting into HR for the first time, to concentrate on one area?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or can they, kind of spread their wings and say, even though I may have experience in only benefits and compensation, can I apply for business partner position if I see that opening?
That's such a great question. It's a big question.
Yeah.
So in my role over my career, I've always been a generalist, and that has served me well. The thing that I would say, I think once upon a time, going into a specific area or into a specialty was a good thing to do and the right thing to do. And I'm not saying that it's not, but what I am saying is that in my own experience, being a generalist has served me well across the more than 20 years that I've been working in this area, regardless of what the economy was, regardless of what was happening within the particular business I was working in, because I could be nimble and flexible.
Yes.
That isn't to say that at particular points in my life I wasn't dedicated to a particular area, but it is so important. I think probably more important than it's ever been for HR leaders to be flexible and nimble and adaptable, what we call agile,
yes,
within a business. So whether you're in technology or not, I think it's incredibly important that while you may have a passion for compensation, that you understand and be able to understand other areas of HR, up to and including taking assignments within those areas or outside of your area of specialty. Because I think it gives you a different perspective, particularly as businesses become more collaborative. And again, because of the global kind of impact that even local businesses are having, it's important for you, if you're, let's use compensation as the example. If you're in compensation, you really need to understand how the other parts of the business and even the other parts of HR function, because, business happens at the sound of business, right? At the sound of technology. And we have to be able to understand in order for collaboration to work well. I think in order for us to be able to support our businesses in meaningful ways, we have to understand what's happening outside of our particular area. I think being a generalist in my case has served me well. I encourage people to do that, although, having a particular focus is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think having depth in one or two particular areas of specialty can also work well, but I would just say don't limit yourself.
Okay, very good. And the second follow-up is, sorry to hear about your mom. May her soul rest in peace.
Thank you so much.
But you did mention taking some time off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that served you well in maybe reassessing your role in HR, and now you're on to more coaching and development.
Right.
Tell us how that taking time off, because myself as well, I've taken some time off from work to complete my MBA. How does that benefit a student or other students that may have taken time off, and how can we reassess ourselves and then maybe realign ourselves now to re-enter the workforce as HR generalists?
That's such a great question. When I was growing, when I first went to college 100 years ago in the dinosaur age, I think the model was that you went to school for 4 years and you did what it was that you were expected to do. And I certainly took that path, although for reasons we can talk about later, I had a bit of a detour. So I went into the workforce after I had been in college for about 3.5 years. My family needed me, and so I moved back home, et cetera, so on. So I went into the workforce out of necessity, and was a full-time worker, and then kind of inserted school as I could.
Yes.
So I took the 20-year plan to my 4-year degree.
Yes.
But I did eventually get there. But then when it came time, when my mother became ill, I had to make some important decisions, and it was a very significant choice for me to make. And I think that anybody who's listening to this, who's had those kind of life situations happen, will understand that it's more than a notion to leave a career or a job, that you've had, if you've got, babies and husbands or spouses or significant others to support, families to support, that sort of a thing. You don't just up and leave and say, oh, I'm just going to go do what I want to do. It took a significant investment of time and analysis and strategic planning for my life to make that decision. In my case, my mom was ill, but I think it was something that I sensed was coming, right? So when I got to that point, I literally had to choose. I was at a crossroads. And I think either path I could have done. So I'm not saying that everybody should do it. Right. But I am saying that when you make the decision with clarity. Good. Right. And, again, in my case, I had the great benefit of being married, and my husband was supportive of me making that choice. But not everybody's in that choice. Has that choice, has that option. Some people are single parents, or they're already caregivers and they've got responsibilities. But here's what I would say, and I say this to all of my clients, it's one of the core components of my coaching practice. You always have more options than you realize. Okay. You always have more options than you realize. And for me, I had to decide, what are my options? Yeah. It never occurred to me that I had options, before then, right? Because we're following that traditional pattern.
Yes.
But I think if the technology age has taught us anything, it's that we have options.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had to believe that I had options. It was up to me to discover what they were. And I left no stone unturned. Okay? I shared with people what was happening to me. I got, I walked into my vulnerable state. Dr. Kim Harris, who is a mentor and a friend and a sister to me, talks a lot about vulnerability and what that does for you. And I think particularly for students, non-traditional students, because I was absolutely that, I think we have to walk into a place where we're vulnerable. I do believe it's a skill, but I think it's one that can be learned.
Good.
So I would just encourage people, if you're at that decision point or trying to figure out, should I keep doing 7 jobs at the same time, or, whatever that case may be, is identify what your options are and then make choices from there.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go a little bit into SHRM Atlanta.
Sure.
And SHRM Atlanta, you have an executive leadership position within that chapter, and they are supporting local chapter for Clayton State University. Mm-hmm. How can SHRM Atlanta serve as a support system for our students' growth and development as emerging HR professionals?
Well, I appreciate you asking that, first of all. SHRM Atlanta is the 3rd largest chapter of its type in the nation. Our CEO, Jean Artemay, and our current president, Lisa Hughes, have been really instrumental, I think, in positioning the chapter for not only expansive growth over the next 3 to 5 years, but also really for positioning the chapter to be a very accepting and critical part of a student's development, a student of human resources.
Yes.
And so we have 5 major verticals where we concentrate on developing not only experienced HR leaders, but new HR practitioners. Whether it's power breakfast opportunities where you get to have you get to hear from business leaders in the Metro Atlanta community and really understanding and learning what's happening in the human resources and business community, to chapter events where you get more specific content-based opportunities, or whether it's our social communities where we have regional development communities, Facebook groups, LinkedIn communities. There are all sorts of ways to begin to integrate being a seasoned and experienced practitioner into your early development as an HR practitioner. So I would just say that SHRM Atlanta is expecting and looking forward to connecting with students. And we've got so many amazing leaders who are really concentrating on early career development, specifically for HR leaders. So in our professional development and member relations verticals, we have leaders that are just specifically focused on doing nothing but reaching out to student chapters and to students. And really, we want to hear from students. We want to understand, what are you curious about? What are you interested in learning more about? Where are you struggling? Yeah. Those are the types of things that we would like to hear from. But what I would say is, learning from a distance has its benefits, but it also has its downsides. So the way that we, want to encourage and connect with students is face-to-face.
Absolutely.
So I would say take advantage of that student rate for the SHRM Atlanta membership, and you can go to shrmatlanta.org and do exactly that. If you go to the membership page, you will see that there is a student rate offered. So we're trying to do our part to make SHRM Atlanta and connecting with the HR community easy for students.
Good.
Now we need them to do their part and to actually join and to participate. Once you participate through membership, then you can participate through volunteering. And we're already beginning to see students from lots of the colleges and universities in the metro Atlanta area do exactly that. They're showing up at the meetings, they're doing their membership, showing up at the meetings, and then raising their hand to volunteer. Okay. And on our volunteer page on the website, you can find the link to the volunteer profile, which will give you an opportunity to share what your specific interests are around volunteering. And as you know,
yes,
volunteering is an excellent way
absolutely
to really, really boost your career in terms of experience and understanding leadership and learning all of the skills that are necessary to be a great practitioner.
And I'll add to that being involved as a volunteer, that I know some students are looking for mentors.
Yeah.
And mentors are not necessarily in your immediate path. When you join an organization that's within the core area of your study or what you want to become in your career, it's easier to find mentorship there. So I think that's one way of looking at it too. If you need mentorship and you want to be accessible to mentors who are experienced and knowledgeable, SHRM Atlanta definitely is the way to go.
Yeah.
So I'll attest to that as well.
I love that you shared that. And what I will just say, and really this could be its own podcast, and that is really understanding what a mentor is.
True.
Right?
Yes.
So they're mentors and they're sponsors and they're coaches. But a mentor relationship is really driven by the mentee.
True.
Right?
Yes.
So a mentor, the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is someone who will champion for you, right, in an organization or in an environment. A mentor is someone who has experience in the area that you want to grow in. But that does not necessarily mean that they're the person that will be driving the relationship. It's in fact the other way around.
Yes.
Because as a mentee, what I would say, and I get this question a lot, Karen, will you be my mentor? And it's like, well, let me ask you a few questions. And generally when I ask those questions, the people that have reached out to me to be mentees don't have great answers. So they're not prepared. So the first thing I would say is if you're going to ask to be a mentee or to have a mentor, is that you need to be prepared. You need to understand who it is that you reached out to, what their career background is. You need to understand what it is that you hope to accomplish by being in relationship with them. You need to understand what your short-term and long-range plans are. Now, does that mean that you've got the yellow brick road to what it is you want to do in the future? No, because as you know from my background, I've been all over the place as it relates to HR and industry and that sort of a thing. But just in terms of having clarity around what's exciting to you, what are your interests, what excites you, what exhausts you. That's what I always say to my clients. What excites you about your work? What exhausts you about your work? What excites you about HR? What is it that you really don't want to do?
Yes.
Right? I do think the combination of being able to answer those things is very important. And then you need to be able to say to your mentor, I would love to establish a relationship with you because I'd love to learn about this part of your experience. This is what I'm trying to do, and this is where I think those insights might really help me. And then, you, again, really have to drive that relationship. So be willing to show up, be willing to reach out and schedule those calls. And again, for each of those, be prepared. I can't stress that enough.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We spoke about SHRM Atlanta, and as students, of course, we're getting either an undergrad or an MBA. Is there or are there other avenues that students can use to for self-development and growth as they enter the workforce or re-enter as transitioning students? Because there are a lot of transitioning students who are changing from one career to the next. Yeah. So outside of SHRM Atlanta, the MBA or undergrad, what other tools can we use as students to help us through that career path?
We were talking about this earlier. I think that one of the things that I get questions a lot about is I don't have any experience. I don't have any experience. I'm trying to get experience. Nobody will give me experience. And I can relate to that because I remember early in my career being frustrated about ways to develop myself, right? Because typically development programs within organizations, particularly within large organizations, have been relegated for director level and above. And it's like, the question we always ask at the entry level stage or mid-career stage is, well, how am I going to get experience if you won't give it to me? And so I would say part of the development process, or maybe the first part of the development process, starts with the individual, right? If you expect someone else, and you may have someone who will serve as a mentor or a sponsor for you within an organization, but I can tell you my own experience and the experience of those that I've worked with, it's rare.
Yeah.
And so I would say that you have to have a perspective on your development at the outset.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about where you want to develop, right? One of the things that can be frustrating for me as a development professional is when people say, well, I want to learn more. I want to develop. I want to grow. And it's like, well, tell me what it is you want to accomplish in that. What is it that you want to be doing? Well, I don't know. I'll just do anything. Well, that's very random. And
yes.
I can't really do anything with that, right?
Yes.
I can't match you with anybody. I can't connect you or send you resources or anything like that. And so I would say have a very clear understanding of how it is you want to develop. So is management of interest to you? Do you want to lead teams? Do you want to lead projects? Do you want to be more behind the scenes? Mm-hmm. Do you want to be an individual contributor working on a project? And then identify the types of skills that you want to grow in or develop in, or even those things that you are really good. I really have a passion around teaching or speaking in front of groups or training. Those are great clues for me as a development professional to understand how to tell you to develop. So I think you have to start with understand how you want to develop. Once you do that outside of SHRM Atlanta and outside of traditional educational opportunities, I would say take on extra projects.
Yes.
Look for ways, even in your community connections, in faith communities or neighborhood communities, look for ways to build skill. But again, have a perspective on what skill you're developing. Because I see it happen, and I know I've been guilty of doing it. I volunteer for 75 things because I can do them all.
Yes.
But then I'm doing something that really has no,
yes.
I have no interest in. It doesn't connect to anything I'm passionate about. So I would say take on extra opportunities to do that. I am an avid reader. As you know, I love books.
Yes.
And I don't wait for people to send me books or links or articles or anything. If there's something I'm curious about, I'm a continual learner, and I get that from both of my parents. I read everything I can. I do think it's important to stay connected with news events. I'm not somebody who watches the news. I don't wake up with the news, and I don't go to bed with the news. But I am very connected to the pulse of what's happening in industries and areas that I'm interested in. I have a great kind of sense of larger issues, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
Things are going on internationally as well as domestically. So I think that's very, very important. I would say, I can't stress the value of networking. Now, when I say that, people get concerned when I say networking because
yes.
I'm an introvert. Well, the truth is I'm an introvert. But I think the power of networking is building a genuine network.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about getting business cards for the sake of doing it. I'm talking about being curious about other people and other professionals who are doing work that you're interested in, and extending those connections genuinely. And even when you go to social engagements and things like that, make a point to do at least one thing every quarter.
Yeah.
There's some people who they're once a week, they're at some sort of networking event. I think that's great. But if it's not something that's naturally wired for you, build networking into your development plan.
Yes.
Right? So for me, I had to build it into my development plan for two reasons. Number one, I was an introvert, and I wasn't necessarily that person who was like, hey, how you doing? That really didn't fit me. The second reason I had to build it into my development plan was because I was super busy. Right? I had a family, I had a job, I had all sorts of stuff going on. It would be very easy just to go right back into being at your computer, doing your work, processing your paperwork, or whatever it was you're doing. But you have to make that an interaction. And the thing I would say about networking is probably two things. One is that every interaction is an interview.
Yes.
Every interaction is an interview. When you meet somebody in your neighborhood, that's an interview. You may not be interviewing with them, but they remember you. You leave a footprint.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times people in my neighborhood or people in social communities that I'm involved in will say, hey, Karen, I remember you're good at this. Would you be interested in?
Yes.
And I've gotten work out of that kind of interaction. So every interaction is an interview. That's the first thing. And then, I would say, again, just make sure that you're putting it into your development plan to do something, to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, and be thoughtful about the types of networking that you're doing. Just because you're going to an event where there are going to be 75 people doesn't mean that that's the kind of interaction, the kind of networking that you want to do on a regular basis. Think about what excites you and what exhausts you, and get involved in those communities, or get involved in communities that may be related to something that you want to be doing, but maybe you're not in now. Because the reality is that there is that dynamic that people will remember and cycle back to people that they've had good interactions with. I have found that to be true.
Very good point.
People get, upset, and they say, well, I applied for this job and nobody's called me back. I get it. But despite the fact that we are in a technological society, relationship is not replaced by technology.
That is true. Very true.
It is
yes.
not. So,
yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure my listeners will agree. Gosh, we're getting a body and blessings of knowledge today. Oh my goodness. I know you spoke about networking and stuff, and for some students it may be expensive to attend seminars and conferences.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice in terms of that, the cost related to attending even quarterly?
Yeah.
It may be, some people a costly venture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that before.
Good.
But I do understand that, because when I was in transition, my budget was top of mind. And even when I was, working, it was still top of mind, because it can be a significant investment when you're going to a conference even, or a meeting on a regular basis that costs $25 or $35. That can be significant. So what I would say is it goes back to building development into, or networking and that sort of thing into your development plan. I believe that every person who is actively working should have a development plan. And what I mean by that relative to this issue that we're talking about regarding the investment is, treat it like you would any other budget item, line item on your budget. So as a professional, as somebody who is anticipating going back into the workplace, whether you're currently working for somebody or not, build that into your budget. That means you might have to save for it. So just in terms of having the available cash, I think that is a great strategy. Take $20 or $30 and tuck it away so that when you see opportunities, you can engage. The other thing that I would say is, for those opportunities that you want to attend, inquire about volunteer opportunities. Okay, volunteering is an excellent way to either, if not get your membership or your fee waived, at least getting a discount. So ask about volunteer opportunities, and then ask for, and particularly with tools like LinkedIn now, you can search for people who are members of organizations and make those connections. Sometimes just having somebody come as a guest is an excellent way.
Yes.
An excellent way. And then, pardon the phrase, but, suck that student status for all it's worth. Because oftentimes organizations will have student memberships or allow students to come for free. But again, just because you're a student doesn't mean you shouldn't budget for having funds available to do networking sorts of things. It may not be that you're learning a specific skill, but networking and engaging should absolutely be a part of your development plan.
Good. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
What are the benefits and values you think that being SHRM certified would bring to a student?
Oh, well, I am SHRM certified, so I have my SHRM SCP, which I'm very proud of. And I really believe that as HR practitioners, that we owe it to ourselves to invest in certification. Now, I will say, just for the benefit of recognizing that we have two tracks right now in the national and international HR community, right? So we have the SHRM certification, and then we have the HRCI certification, both of which are extremely valuable. The HRCI certification was kind of the first certification that SHRM National endorsed, and then the SHRM certification is the most recent one. Both are incredibly valuable. I think investing in either one, I can't say that I have a preference. I do have my SHRM SCP only because I was part of the pilot group that tested for that. And so my hope is to go back and to get my HRCI certification. Nice. So I think that's important. But I think it does give you credibility. I also think it gives you a level of visibility into the different aspects of human resources that you may otherwise be disconnected from. So it's not just about having kind of being dangerously knowledgeable about the different areas of human resources. I do think studying not only the art but the science of the different aspects of human resources gives us credibility as business leaders. Much like any other profession, a certification indicates that you have invested in your career. You're not just doing it, but you're investing in your career. You take yourself seriously. And I think it just gives you the ability to be more intelligent, if you will, as you talk with other practitioners. I have the great fortune in SHRM Atlanta of being connected to some of the most competent HR practitioners on the planet.
Nice.
Right? We're close-knit community, but listen, they're doing business for real in companies of all sizes. And for me, being able to understand the components and the complexity of what those leaders are dealing with it's imperative for me, particularly now that I'm on the resource partner side. I would not dare go into a conversation without being able to ask important and relevant questions and really being able to understand what my peers and colleagues and clients are dealing with.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Very good. HR should be a strategic role for any organization, at least that's how I see it. Yeah. And I think that's how most people should see it. Mm-hmm. But HR is still viewed as a support function. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How can or what can you HR entrants do to make the role of HR be seen as a catalyst of change and not only a function of change?
So I don't know how much time we have, but this is kind of my pet peeve.
That's okay. You make extra time.
Okay, this is my pet peeve. Because quite a few years ago, I started really building content around what I call moving from tactical to strategic for HR practitioners. And I did a keynote around that very topic for a great organization called Human Capital Institute. And David Foreman, who was the CEO at the time of that organization, and he's really championed that. I'm going to talk about David in a minute and his work. But I got to talking about this topic really based on my own experience. And I will say that it wasn't because I was so smart and so much better than everybody else. It was really a journey for me to understand that as an HR practitioner, I had to behave in a way that got me out of being perceived as tactical only. So just being able to push paper, process benefits, and all those sorts of things. I wanted to do more, but as an HR practitioner, I wasn't acting that way. I wasn't behaving that way. So I would get frustrated. Well, why don't we have a seat at the table? And why didn't they include me in this meeting? And why am I only doing this type of work? Well, that's how I was behaving. And so if you think about how operations folks work within a business, most of them don't understand HR. Really, that's really the value that we bring, right?
Yes.
But they tend to have operators or operations folks tend to have a few more what's the word I'm looking for? A few more levers to work with within the business. So it's easier for them to transition between marketing and finance, right? And all those other components of the business. Our experience in human resources has been, if we're honest with ourselves, and I think if you ask any other HR practitioner that they will share their experience with this as well, that we get into HR, and this is what I hear, like, well, I'm not really good at math. or not, that's not really my area, or it's not my job. I've heard all of those things
Yes.
over the years from HR practitioners. And so, this idea that there is more work for us to do, and there's actually some great data behind this, that CEOs and decision makers within organizations want to give HR practitioners more exposure, more visibility, and that sort of thing. But I think we limit ourselves when we kind of stay stuck in the tactical role, and we don't understand and can operate within the other components of the business. And let me just talk about David Foreman for a minute, who I really think has a deep passion for this particular area in human resources. He recently wrote a book, which I bought, I think 5 or 6 of, and it's time for me to order more because I give them away as gifts. I do. His book is called Fearless HR, Driving Business Results. And it's a fabulous I don't even know what to call it, a treatise. I'm not sure, but it's one of the smartest books that I've read from an HR practitioner that really talks about in depth this idea that HR can be and should be a strategic operations business professional. HR should be one of the things that we can do, but it shouldn't be the only thing we can do. Yeah. Once upon a time, I think that was the business model. That was what was expected, and that's what we did. But I think now, with global businesses, again, even local businesses are global, whether they think so or not, you have to be, if you're going to be relevant within an organization, and if you're going to continue to add value as businesses grow, and really maintain and sustain within the marketplace, you have to be smart. You have to be curious about the other parts of the business, and you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and learn new things. So this book, Fearless HR, Driving Business Results, I think, by David Foreman, is just a fabulous kind of immersion in understanding where we're getting it right and what opportunities we have. And so I will say, I think I have 1 copy left. I'm going to give you this book.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to give you this book to raffle off to your student members.
I sure will. Yes.
Because I think it's a great way to really understand what lay before you as you walk into your career in human resources.
Definitely. So awesome. Okay, our final question for today is, there was a recent article that I saw on SHRM.org that discussed that Walmart, which may be the largest employer in the country, that are laying off HR professionals and then rehiring them as contract workers. Mm-hmm. Do you think that should be a concern to students who are entering into HR? Or what are the values of, say, being a contract worker versus a full-time employee in HR?
Oh, such deep, smart questions. One of the questions I used to get, particularly post-recession, in fact, it was probably all post-recession, when I was still in corporate, was, is this a stable company to work for? I used to get that all the time. And I'm pretty direct with that. With the answer to that. So no company, you should expect no company to be the only place you ever work. We don't live in that kind of society anymore. And that's important. It's an important foundation to answer this question, because part of what people are really looking for or interested in as it relates to being a full-time worker, for the purpose of our discussion, is stability, right? I want a job, I want benefits, and I want all those things. And I'm not saying any of those things are wrong. I need benefits for my family. I get it. But we don't work in that kind of economy anymore, where any business can promise you anything, right? We just don't.
That's very true.
And so, when people walk into a role, even large established companies like a Walmart,
yes,
right? We expect going into it, I'm gonna retire here, but we, while that might be something we hope for, it can't be something we demand anymore. Number one, because there's no company in the United States that is required to do that.
Yes.
And we want businesses to be nimble enough to figure out how to operate efficiently. And in many cases, because we have access to global, to a global workforce, that may mean that companies decide from a profitability, from a revenue standpoint, top line, bottom line perspective, however you want to put it, that there are efficiencies to be gained by employing workers in other places. Now, you can take exception to that if you want, and there are plenty of people who do. That's not a political statement. That is if you understand business,
yes.
If you understand business and how those sorts of efficiencies are discovered, then that's a reality that businesses may take advantage of. That's not to say you walk into every job being discouraged. I think you need to walk into every job being informed.
Good.
And having perspective that that's an option that people have, much like it is that we have options as workers to work globally.
Yes.
Okay? We have options to work globally from a physical perspective, but also in terms of technology. I employ someone who works in the Philippines. Right?
Wow.
So I'm just saying that it goes both ways.
The technology actually makes the global workforce smaller. Because you're not leaving your home or your workplace to go navigate and get this person. The technology makes it more connected, so to speak.
It makes it absolutely connected. So actually, I think it makes the workforce bigger.
Yes.
Right? It makes it bigger because you have more access. You can employ more people. Now, every organization is different and they have rules and regulations and all that sort of thing. So we're not talking about that. But just in terms of the perspective of, should I expect to go to one company and work forever? Yeah. My personal opinion is the answer is no. Enjoy it while it's there. But if it changes, I think we need to be prepared for that. Right?
Yes.
There are benefits to being an FTE, somebody who is on the payroll and gaining benefits, and there are great benefits to that. But it is not promised, it's not guaranteed. There are benefits to being an independent contractor. There are lots of benefits to being an independent contractor. So I think it really is just a matter of understanding that I think as workers, we need to go into it not putting kind of an unrealistic expectation on business, but really looking at it as an opportunity to say, what, for the time, and again, understand your company, ask the right questions and all those sorts of things. But if those things do change, I think we have options as workers that we didn't have before that make it appealing to not only the business, but to us as workers.
Great. So for our students that are listening, we've learned about or been schooled from Miss Karen about development and growth and networking and maybe getting our certification. And Karen, I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
It's very, very well informed for us. And I'm sure myself has learned as well. And for those that are listening, that it's a whole lot that we've gained in this maybe 40 minutes or so, but it's a lifetime of lessons for all of us. So I want to thank you for joining us. And I want everyone that's listening to know that you can get in touch with Karen. You can visit her website at www.tapexecutivecoaching.com. And Karen, again, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's
really,
my
really
pleasure.
Appreciate
and
it.
Good luck and best success to all of the students.